Yes, you don't know. Oh
And
dear.
we're live.
You missed us.
Why?
Hey, we're live.
We're
Live
live.
for
We're dead
audience,
inside.
millions of viewers.
Mhm.
Million.
Any,
Rapturous applause.
Six
What's this
sixes
about
of
a new
millions.
applause module or
there.
something?
Okay, on the YouTube, I'm gonna go check and see if it's actually true. But apparently, on the YouTube video, there is a button to hit for applause for applesauce, and
Right.
I don't see where it is on here. It showed me it when I started up the stream. It was like, hey, look, there's a little applause button. I don't see it, so I'm assuming they're just lying to me.
Will it be in the control room? I don't know. I have no idea how
because
this.
then only we'd be able to use it. That wouldn't make much sense.
Okay.
Anywho,
Why? Drew all over your face.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at all the stuff that you can do in Hangouts, and it's all very pointless. Right.
like
Get on with
most
the
of
show, shall we?
Google Plus.
We can't talk about the latest run because it literally went up 30 seconds before this stream did. Thanks, Casca.
Oh, it actually went up.
Yeah, I sent
Yeah.
it to Alex Straza as we were waiting for you to unfuck your Hangout.
You heard it here first, folks.
Mmm.
We're on time.
Mhm.
We're at the pinnacle of punctuality. Are we actually live? It says we are, but I'm not seeing anything on the YouTube video.
Well, it's got a delay, hasn't it?
Yeah, but for like 5 minutes?
No,
No,
it's
the
working.
YouTube,
I'm gonna
the YouTube
refresh it
video is
and see
working
it.
for me.
Yep.
Okay, I
refresh,
just had to refresh. Just refreshed it, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Cool. Oh dear, but no, we can't
There's only two
discuss the
people
round
watching?
as it's literally just happening as we speak. So, let's
And
talk
neither
about
of the
other things.
other reviewers are present in this stream, so
Have we ever heard Casca's voice?
Yeah,
He
well,
was on like one of the first podcasts.
yeah, like the
I'm pretty
second or
sure.
thord one.
Right. Okay. I don't remember it. Back in the mist of
He's-
time.
He's Asian.
He lives
Yeah.
over in the Philippines, that
Yes.
kind of area, so I'm pretty sure it's not a good time for him.
No, it's not a good time for me. It's fucking 2 o'clock in the morning. In my
Well-
mind, Casca and Core have just sort of merged into one. Like, I find it very difficult to tell them apart sometimes. Don't know. It's very strange. But anyway, seeing as neither Casca nor Core, nor whatever merged being
Well,
they are in my mind are here, we can discuss other things without them interfering. Like, Sock, I believe, had an idea just before the show went live.
yes, we've got the. Has anyone read the current write-off fix? I know I haven't had the time to actually look them over, but that's the question I'm posing.
Alex, you do write-off stuff. Alex,
Yeah, here we
Did
go
we
again.
lose him again?
he's dead again. Good
Is he
God.
dead? Oh no, he's
Mhm.
dead. Oh, that's upsetting.
All
thought
right,
he was
second
just saying
topic of
bye.
choice.
No, damn it.
Are you there?
Nope, he's dead.
Yep,
He's
he's
very
gone.
dead.
Okay. Right, second topic then. This is great.
Well, so October is coming up. In
Mhm.
case none of you pay attention to your calendars.
One shot Tober.
Yeah. I mentioned that last week and have since I've actually gotten people asking me why I don't like it. And Rainbow Bob, I helped him write a blog post on the topic, which he summarizes it quite nicely. Go check it out. Basically, he speaks as someone who took part in One Shotober last year, speaks of the horrible burnout it gives you as an author, and also speaks as a reader in the horrible amounts of dreck that it swarms the site with. So it's bad for writers and it's bad for readers and it's just bad for anyone who goes on the site. So please, for the love of God, don't do One Shotober. Do something else like NaNoWriMo or the write-offs that Sock was mentioning.
Something that actually encourages productivity and creativity.
Yeah.
It seems to me like One Shotober
yeah,
would be.
Being able to just vomit out as many ideas as possible does not make a good writer.
That's
Mhm.
not true.
We're not talking about FimFix standards, Alex.
No.
Mm.
This is
Oh,
a
dear.
professional reviewing group.
Have you seen have you seen like 90% of mystery writers? All right, James Patterson, Dan Brown.
Dan Brown. Oh, the Angels and
Vinci
Demons
Code,
guy.
that.
Yeah.
The Da
Good
Vinci
Lord, does that.
shit pile.
Yeah. Not great. Oh dear. Someone mentioned there was something about Stephen King. I've never gotten into Stephen King, but apparently there's like a recurring ghost character or something like that. And I was just, hang on a second, that doesn't sound much like Stephen King. Apparently there's a recurring character who's undead or something like that.
I don't
Just-
know. I don't read Stephen King.
No.
Yeah,
Does anyone?
Yeah, I
know
haven't heard of
Stephen-
that.
I don't know what Stephen King is.
Right.
Read his
gruesome murder
book on
stuff.
writing, but that's honestly about the extent I have of his writing. I've
Okay.
seen some of his films. He directed those, right?
I have.
Definitely, yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I
dear.
remember Cujo about the family that was trapped in a car for 2 hours. That was the extent of it.
Mhm.
2 hours. That's not that long. I was trapped in a car for 12 hours when I drove to Branson, Missouri, like 5 or 6 years ago.
That the height of tourism that is
The-
Branson, Missouri.
The worst part is the car ride wasn't that bad. Branson was much worse.
I was gonna say the worst part was Branson.
Branson it's not even like, okay, Atlantic City is the poor man's Vegas. Branson, Missouri is not even the poor man's Disney. It's like it's for people that are too poor to afford the poor man's Disney. They go to Branson, Missouri.
Wait, it's like a theme park or something?
Sort of, yeah.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of there's like a weird little themed town and stuff, and I don't know. Branson, Missouri is a fucking weird place. There's not like roller coasters and shit, but there's a bunch of it. Other than that, it might as well be a theme park.
It's a resort town or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like Epcot Center.
Right. Okay.
Is
Interesting.
Yeah,
Branson
basically
anywhere? Is Branson anywhere near Fort Leonard Wood? No.
You got
Where's
me.
it in Missouri?
I don't know. The middle of nowhere. It's Missouri.
Right.
I don't know anything about
All of
Missouri, to be
Missouri
honest.
is the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, I know Fort Leonard Wood is in Missouri, and how everyone who goes there knows to call Missouri misery.
Yeah.
Well, I think people
I
would
know
call it
next
that
to
regardless.
nothing about American states, so yay me.
Well, you
Why
only
don't you know anything about American states, Plum? Jeez. Are you not American?
when I was
Alex's kill again. Fucking.
when I
Nope,
was
nope.
okay,
He's back.
fucking Christ.
Nope. Your
Am I
camera's
here?
dead, but you're back.
Oh,
Okay.
no,
I'm
his
back.
camera's back.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. So, I don't know what's happening because I can hear you.
Yes,
I
you're-
never stop
Well, you're
hearing you
really
guys.
out of sync.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Okay, whatever. Anyways, when I was talking to my friends in Ireland, I asked them what states they knew in America, and invariably the only ones they knew were New York, Florida, Texas, and California.
Okay.
That's it. Nobody, which I guess is, apparently Florida might as well only be Orlando though. That's the only place people knew in Florida.
Miami.
I guess, and Miami, but it was Florida was basically Disney World.
Yeah.
And
Of course, the entire state of New York is New
it's
York
just
City.
New York City. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no New York is a state. What?
Though to be fair, that's almost pretty true.
To be fair, name the Baltic states.
From-
You know.
Let's
Baltic
see,
states. Are you including Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia?
Yep.
Why not?
Latvia.
Moldova.
Oh, wait, Baltic. Oh, I was thinking Black Sea. Or wait, I don't know. I'm all confused now. Moldova
So
is
am I.
on the
We
other
kind
side
of-
the country.
Let's see. This is a bit of a tangent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
We're
is.
talking about. We were talking about One Shot-tober.
Yes.
Now we're talking about the
Well.
Baltic.
We were just filling our time with Alex's road trip story.
Is Alex dead? Yeah. Every time Alex's camera freezes, I'm just like, is he dead again? Oh god.
I'm never dead. You can't kill me.
Ripping peaches.
How about what are our suggestions for making One-Shot-tober better?
Don't
Well, it
do it.
seems to me like
Don't.
you've got you've got four weeks in the month. Why not just see if you can put out 4 genuinely good stories in that entire month?
Why
Set
don't we-
like say actually set a word limit. Make it kind of a broken down national novel writing month. You say
Right.
you do 4 20,000 word stories.
So it's NaNoWriMo 4 times over. Like,
Yeah,
you're
but
you're
kind
writing
of,
a story
yeah.
a week.
but
Like-
infinitely more terrible. Not that NaNoWriMo isn't also awful.
See, the problem is that you're forcing, you're trying to force creativity in a thing. So it's difficult to get it good, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
to a certain degree.
Yes and no. I mean, look at the write-offs. How much time do we have for writing those? It's only a couple of days. What if
Yeah.
basically made One-Shot over that? Just
Just a long succession
placed
of
all
write-offs.
along the month.
Mm.
I mean,
I think it's just a difference in scale, isn't it? Like with NaNoWriMo, you run the risk of forcing someone to pad the story out and to drag it out longer than it needs to be in order to meet the word count or whatever. Whereas with One-Shotober, you're forcing 31 story ideas in a month, which is ludicrous. Like,
mhm.
I would be very surprised if you could find an author who would just write down 31 decent story ideas and just be able to write a story for each of them. That seems
like
pretty
just
impossible.
even coming
I'll
up with.
admit,
I was gonna say even coming up with 31 ideas.
no, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, fuck. Even coming up with 31 ideas would be difficult.
Mm,
Is it
Yeah.
still One-Shot-tober if you write 30 chapters of the same story?
no.
One each? No, that still doesn't count?
Nope.
'Cause I was
Nope,
going to
nope,
say
nope.
Skirts does that every month, but you know.
I
That's
see.
true.
I thought.
Yeah, Australia
I
is
think of the
still.
rules
He's
that
on
you
like
could-
story number 6 now.
Isn't he planning
Publishes
like
a
12
chapter
or
every day.
something? He's planning like 12 stories in that series or something stupid like that, isn't he?
12. My God.
I thought
Plus.
the rules actually allowed for you to kind of have a consistent concept behind your one shots, but they still had to be kind of their own self-contained things. I was actually considering doing a war fic where each installment would be just like one single action or behind the lines sort of deal.
Like, I suppose there's nothing stopping you from having them all take place in the same shared universe, but the idea is that they're supposed to be one shots. They should be able to stand on their own, you know?
Exactly. And I think that's entirely possible if you have a shared universe.
Hmm.
Especially if there's a war going on, because there's no end to the stories you can tell with that sort of concept.
Well, that's true, I suppose. But the way it was phrased before made me to believe that it would just be 30 chapters of something, which is not quite the same. But anyway, the problem with One-Shotober is that it has the first of all being the fact that you need 31 unique ideas, which is an extremely challenging thing to do without just resorting to Twilight Sparkle eats a peach style sort of thing, you know. Hint, hint, obs. How many stories did we get out the whole peach fiasco?
Too
Would
many.
it have been 31? Oh dear. But no, like, the way to do it better was obviously to cut down on the number
Yeah.
of prompts, but that doesn't ensure that the prompt is quality. I mean, is there the only way you could really ensure the prompt is quality is to provide a prompt, surely?
Yeah, there's an idea. What if you actually gave prompts out every couple of days and challenged everyone to write according to those prompts? Or
So it'd just be a
Perhaps-
month of mini-fake write-offs.
I guess
Isn't that kind of the same
perhaps-
thing?
basically,
but- Or say, like you divide the month up into different periods of writing. Like say. Well, go ahead, Alex.
Wow, that was really delayed. I said that
Or
like
not.
Did we
15
lose
minutes
him?
ago.
I have no idea what's going on with Alex. Alex, when you hear this message, say the number 2.
2.
Okay, cool. So we have got the delay has stopped, except for your camera, which is like 5 minutes behind you. Right. So you were saying, Sock, or not? Maybe
Give
Sock
him a
is the one
moment.
delayed. I'm talking to Sock. Hello.
Earth to
Sock.
sock. Earth to
Nope.
sock.
Oh, you were talking to me? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
What did you say? Was
Yeah,
it?
well, say you have a period where you're free to write, and then you're given
No,
the prompt.
we just started calling
Okay, Alex
these
is killed again.
He's a robot.
So I pressed the mute button like 10 seconds ago, and he's still talking. Right.
Okay, moving on. I guess what I was thinking was, say you divided the month up into different writing periods, and say for a couple of days you have just free write. Whatever comes to mind, see if you can develop into an idea, churn it out, get it down on paper, and develop it enough to the point where it's readable. And then say you have a prompt, which limits your scope a bit, but nonetheless still challenges you to write the same amount.
What could be? This could turn out really badly. But what if you had you had to keep the story consistent, but adjust it to the changing prompts. Like main character lives in Equestria, and then the next prompt is main character suddenly somehow gets to the desert or something.
So you'd be given story elements to work into your story you just have one of your main characters now has a disease or something like that,
Now has dysentery.
Yeah, it's okay. So
they started playing Oregon Trail?
yeah,
I was just going to say.
October Gone Trail.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That could actually be interesting. Say, you have different writing periods, and you give people a heads up on the different prompts, like, say, intro period, here's the constraints you have to work with, see what you spin.
Mm-hmm.
And halfway through the writing period on that, you let everyone know exactly what's going to happen next, what the choices are for the next phase.
Mm.
And then halfway through that, and so on and so forth.
So that is actually quite.
That could be very interesting, actually.
Yeah, because it's in the same way that it challenges your creativity. Because if you say X, like a character has dysentery, then you've got to find a way to work that into your story that doesn't feel forced, and
it still gives you enough time to actually plan what you're writing currently around that. Or does it? Because say you give a list of prompts that are going to come up, but only one of them gets picked. So you have to kind of leave things open for all of those possibilities while still moving toward them.
This is interesting. This is like story prompts on next level, because at the moment what you have is you just have whoever's judging it suggest they'd come up with a prompt, or someone would come up with a prompt, and you just have write a story based around this. But this is a sort of evolving competition prompt. I quite like that.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, we should
have
suggest
something here.
this to somebody, definitely.
Yeah, we should.
are geniuses.
The Seattle's Angels competition. Interesting. See, the thing that you were mentioning, the way you explained this at the start, Sock, where you had writing in periods, made it sound like some sort of writing triathlon, where you'd have one free writing session, and then you'd have one prompt-related session, and then you'd have some other sort of session towards the end, which in itself is an interesting idea. I wouldn't expect any incredible stories out of it, but be an interesting exercise for authors, at least. So,
In fact, incorporating again the multiple prompts idea into all of this. Say you let everyone start with their own baseline, and then you throw constraints into that, and you let them deal with those, and then give them another free period.
This is really...
Well...
Yeah. Huh. Well,
you heard it here first, viewers. Keep an
Yeah.
eye out.
We should poke obs.
Somebody write this down before we forget it.
Already on it.
Oh dear. So what were we doing? We were talking about One Shot Over when we got to this. And we got onto that because of the upcoming month of October, and with that comes Halloween, which is going to be...
And Deja actually asked, are any of us writing horror stories?
Yes, I'm writing all of them.
Because of course you are.
I'm collaborating with him, actually. We're writing
As
together.
I want to do, yes.
We're combining all of our many words and word experiences.
Bloody Hank Hill writing Ponyfish there. Words and word experiences. But no, like...
It's not selling anything.
Tell you what.
I'll tell you what.
Turn down for what? No.
I'd be surprised if someone hasn't done that edit on YouTube yet.
Oh, no, there's a fantastic one on YouTube. It's the Mo Butt Propane remix. Hang on. I'll find you that and link it in the Seattle's Angels chat in a bit. But like, as we were
so
saying...
everyone can enjoy. Okay.
Yes. Halloween. Is anyone here planning a fic for it at all?
I've actually had a concept I've been kicking around. Basically, the whole idea is Twilight is directed by Celestia to go to this monastery off in the mountains somewhere, where she can apparently hone her concentration skills. Because this monastery has a unique set of distractions, i.e. there are things that lurk there, always just hanging out of your reach, out of your peripheral vision. And the catch is, you can't pay any attention to them. You can't make any mention of them, because if you do, they will kill you. So, from there, Twi basically has to grapple with the training she's receiving from the monks there, as well as her own curiosity as to what the hell are these things?
What are we talking about? I was away from the computer.
Story idea for Halloween.
It's actually based off of one of the most effective haunted houses I've ever been in. That was basically the thing we were told going in was, there are going to be things in the rooms here. Don't pay them any attention, otherwise they will get you. Yeah, so we went wandering through, and there were people in sheets and all that, and we just had to ignore them, even as they closed in around us, even as they whispered, "Please, look at me. I just want to be noticed. Look at me." It was some of the freakiest shit I have ever experienced in my life.
I was actually going to say that when you first started talking about them being things that you couldn't look at or they'd kill you, I was actually reminded of the Minecraft Enderman, where they're completely harmless until you look at them. Or actually, they're completely harmless while you look at them, but the instant you turn away, they'll go for you. And while you look at them, they silently scream at you, which is mildly freaky the first time you see that. So.
And then you look away, and suddenly they're teleporting and everywhere, and everything turns into chaos and horror.
Pretty much. But yeah, so that sounds like an interesting idea. So we should probably go about talking what makes a decent horror story. Like, I think, was it the first time I did a round with UCS, and it was Good Intentions by Just Horsing Around? Was that in the first round I did with you? That was that was a pretty good story. I'm not sure.
Oh yes.
Would it be called horror? I suppose it would.
Yeah, I'd call it horror. It was
Tense, definitely. There's a lot of tension in that story.
Actually,
Yeah.
I actually read that one.
Yeah, because you tried to put it on a recent round, and then
Yeah.
Thus my ignorance is revealed to the world at large. Yes,
Mm.
yes.
you can always blame your partner. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Red.
Nope, blame was
No, it
solely
was-
on me.
Oh,
But yeah,
I choose to blame Pav.
there was. I guess you could say there were some horror elements to it, but I honestly think
was
it
just
was more,
really
more of a
dark.
thriller.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So horror versus thriller then. Go on, Sock. Give us
Well,
some words on that.
Yeah, that particular story was more thriller than horror, really, because you see things developing in the background, and yeah, there's that overarching threat from the creature that Twice trying to find, but overall, that's not the focus of it. It's more focused on the intrigue and such that's going on around that. I think as far as horror stories go, to harken all the way back to Seattle's Angels Inception, there's Fleeting Light in the Darkness.
oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
We all love that story,
Very true.
don't we?
Mhm.
We do, don't we? I better hear a chorus of yeses!
I think Red's gone away again.
No, I'm yes.
Now I'm yes.
Okay, you get
But
to
yeah.
live.
hmm I can definitely agree with Fleeting Light being a very good story.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good example of what horror needs, and that is the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
As Lovecraft himself even admitted that the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You see this all the time in horror films, horror video games, horror fiction. You have to let the audience concoct the horror for themselves. You give them too much, well, it loses all the mystery of it.
Mm-hmm.
You give them too little, and they're just left kind of sitting there. You give them just enough. Give them just enough rope to hang themselves.
Mm-hmm. Like
They do it themselves.
It's very true that
It is a fine. It is a
effect-
balance.
Go on, Red.
It is kind of a balancing act, though, because it is people enjoy figuring out stuff for themselves, and if you do go too much with the unknown bits, then a lot of people will walk away unsatisfied, not necessarily because the story was bad, but because they're like, well, it becomes sort of a criteria of theirs that they at least were able to get a working theory of what's going on, and if they can't, then that makes the story less enjoyable to them.
I'd like to quote Yahtzee briefly. What we can create will always be inferior to what we can imagine, because everything I imagine has tits that lactate creamed rice.
Everything.
Yep, that's
Everything.
Yahtzee, all right.
But it's very true that horror is, in a lot of ways, a deeply personal thing based on your past experiences and what you truly fear. So by what the author fears, and he tries to create the scariest monster he can imagine with creamed rice tits, isn't going to be as scary as what the reader can imagine, because they have, to the reader at least, because they have their own experience, and maybe it has a dick that shoots waffles. So it's an intensely personal thing, and the more detail you give about waffle dicks or creamed rice tits alienates your audience slightly, in a way, I suppose.
That does sound
I'm
like
still
a
stuck
very,
up on that comment you just made, Plum.
that does sound like a very personal and unique phobia.
To be fair,
Podcast 34. Let it be known to history. The date that Plum talked about waffle dicks.
waffle dicks and creamed rice tits, yes. I'm
We
gonna
have
put that
achieved a milestone today.
I'm going to put that on my tombstone.
The only
But,
thing he
like-
feared was waffle dicks.
But you get the point, waffle dicks and such things aside. the whole thing of everyone has their own fears. Like some people are deathly afraid of spiders, and others of the dark, and other people think spiders are just cute. So, but whatever the author feels is most scary is not necessarily what the audience will feel is the most scary. So, just it's often best to leave the audience to make it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of thing.
I'm reminded of when the third Lord of the Rings movie came out, Return of the King,
Mhm.
and we got the movie version of Shelob, the spider,
Ah,
and the glaring difference between the movie Shelob and the book Shelob, because the book does not necessarily point out exactly what Shelob looks like. In the movie, you just get this really big spider.
yeah.
Compared to some of the other stuff that the Fellowship has fought up to that point, a particularly large spider is not that intimidating.
No.
Except for the people who are afraid of spiders, but not a lot of people have a actual phobia of spiders. I didn't, so I just found it a little bit silly seeing Shelob, this supposedly mythical creature from beyond the dawn of time, scrabbling around
Something you see on your kitchen counter.
like something you see like
On
a
a
spider.
really big
Yeah.
kitchen counter.
That said, however, Peter Jackson is an admitted arachnophobe.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that he
Yep.
created what he would be afraid of, not necessarily what could
Scary.
be universally scary. Because
Mhm.
if you read the book version of Shelob, Shelob is less of a spider and more of a figment. Like she is everything that is scary, in particularly about spiders, but mostly just
Yeah,
she is
Evil things.
as I recall,
unknown inhuman
as I recall,
creature.
you get a sense that she is a giant spider, but is so much beyond that she is a wholly evil thing.
Mm.
That the form she takes is supposed to be so grotesque as to be unimaginable. And yeah, I think that proves your point, Red. It kind of, the more you leave to the reader, the better.
It's like Lovecraft. Like you've got artists who try and draw the old gods, where the old gods are supposed to be literally incomprehensible beings, where
Things that should not be.
yeah, and they're greeted by the sound of trumpets farting and various other things, and like
There's some Pythonian imagery.
yeah, and in the end, whenever people draw these indescribable old gods, they just end up with lumpy things with squiggly bits and eyes where
That's
there
true.
normally wouldn't be eyes. Like,
That's true.
if I saw that in real life, I can imagine that would be kind of disgusting and a bit scary. But as from something so horrible it breaks your mind, it's a lump with squiggly bits. It's
Why
Most
not?
apt description of Lovecraft.
Why not go for like? How about you just draw an MC Escher painting with teeth? Like, here you go.
there you go.
I am filing that metaphor away for later use.
What? It's a lump with squiggly bits, or the MC
No,
Escher
it
one?
was like an MC Escher painting with teeth.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I guess the whole point of that, just to reinforce it, is the key to horror is to leave as much to the reader as possible.
Mm.
Give them just enough rope to hang themselves.
So what would you say, Sock, is the difference between a horror story and a thriller story?
I guess with a horror story, the threat is more abstract, whereas with a thriller, it's more concrete. Like with a thriller, you have some semblance of an idea of what the capabilities of whatever your antagonist is, be it a person or a force, is capable of. Whereas with horror, well, the thrill of it comes from not knowing what his exact capabilities are, and therefore it could be anything.
Okay. Well, could you
Like-
not describe a similar sort of thing from Good Intentions? My memory may be a bit hazy because you have read it much more recently than I did, but from what I understood, the from what I remember anyway, there was just a sort of unknowable thing that was responsible for these horrible occurrences, and
Right.
people had assumed it was these newcomers to the village or whatever, you know?
Yeah, that created a lot of the tension, but there was still the you don't know what the monster is. It's doing things.
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
it slowly escalated, and then the town kind of slowly got more and more creeped out and started turning more and more on the newcomers, and that whole
Well, yeah.
tension just kind of.
That's what I was saying. Where Sock's definition there was that a horror story was where the threat wasn't knowable, and the thriller story was something that was knowable, but you couldn't defeat it, or
Kind
similar.
of, sort of. Again, I think with a thriller, you can actually see a bit more of the threat. Again, with intentions, like sure, there is something unknowable happening in the background, but some of the threat, the tension, comes from what is concretely happening around that. I
Right.
guess
So it's not the threat itself that is
I
necessarily
I would try to simplify it to it's a matter of what the story is focusing on. Like a thriller is how are they going to stop the bad guy? Horror is more just can they even stop the bad guy?
I'd have to agree with that. Like,
Yeah, that seems pretty
if you look at,
reasonable.
I guess, say a textbook.
Because in horror the focus is usually not on actually defeating the antagonist. It's more just surviving.
No.
Let's talk about Silent Hill. You know, the goal,
Yeah.
the ultimate arc of the story is not defeat the monsters and purge the town of all heretics and xenos. It's, you know, while this guy
the Emperor!
yes. While the main character is being threatened by these horrible unknown things, he has a not necessarily a lesser conflict, but something that's removed enough from the monsters that you know he can't actually beat the creatures. It's just more the effect that has on him.
So the horror story is about surviving, whereas the thriller story is about overcoming. Is that it?
Horror can also be about overcoming, but it's not about overcoming the antagonist so much as it is maybe overcoming something about. It's more internalized, I think.
Speaking of horror,
I'm not.
I added a little something to my picture here.
Yes, that thing I quoted. I'm not convinced there
God.
is a definitive distinction between horror and thriller.
There's a lot of overlap because horror is thrilling, and thrillers can have horror elements.
So would it
Yeah.
be the kind of thing where all horrors are thrillers, but not all thrillers are horrors? Is that what you're kind of going for?
That's not what I was saying. I was like, maybe it's like action and adventure. You can have actions, you can have adventures, and you can have action adventures, and there's just no, like, you couldn't concretely say something is this or that. I don't know. I've never really thought about the definition of a thriller story at all.
I suppose to toss my chips into the pile, I'd say that the thrill of a thriller is different from the thrill of a horror story. Again, with a thriller, you have a good sense of what's going on around everything. And the tension, the entertainment from that comes from seeing how your protagonist or whoever we're following in the story overcomes that. Like, I guess to use a textbook example of a thriller would be like, say, the Bourne series. You know, we like seeing Jason Bourne figure his way through all the various challenges that are thrown at him to defeat the forces conspiring against him. Whereas with a horror story, we just want to see our protagonist survive, or maybe not even that, but see how they break down in the face of whatever antagonistic force they're up against.
See, I would never have described the Bourne trilogy as thrillers. Maybe. I'm not hugely into the Bourne series, I must admit, but I know the basic premise and I know a little bit about them. and I'm not sure I'd class them as thriller. It's entirely possible. I just realised that maybe thriller has a different definition in the States as it does to over here, because it wouldn't be the first thing that's done that.
Well, what would you define as a thriller then?
That's what I was saying earlier. I've never really considered my definition of a thriller. I'd always considered it as a subsection of horror, where it's basically the action horror, where you've got people running from Jason Voorhees or whatever, you know? Like, I don't know.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
I guess like those sorts of horror films kind of fit in their own subgenre of the slasher flick.
You could also say that the genres try to elicit different kinds of emotional responses. Horror is usually negative. Thrillers are usually positive. Your adrenaline's pumping. You're like, yeah, go.
There we go. There we go.
Go. Hop the hurdles.
I'd agree with that.
And horror is more like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm even watching this. Why is this even on?
I looked up the definition of thriller.
Ice cream or whatever.
I looked up the definition of thriller, and it says it's a genre of literature, film, and television program that uses suspense, tension, and excitement as its main elements. Thank you.
Deja just posted that in the chat.
She literally posted that as you were reading it.
Yeah, that is extremely...
Serendipity works in mysterious ways.
See, look, Deja even said a thriller is like a Jason Voorhees movie, isn't it? So, interesting. I don't know. I'm of the opinion that there isn't a clear boundary, and Wikipedia would seem to.
But that's good, I think, because if we had clear boundaries on what exactly a story was, then I think creativity would be a little more stultified.
I think my image of thrillers is mainly because the most common kind I've seen are crime thrillers, where it's about like you've always got some sort of confrontation with the evil axe murderer or whatever, which has maybe coloured my perception a bit. I don't know.
Well, that might be a key turning point of the whole thing. I wonder if the line isn't drawn between how much power the protagonists have over the antagonists. Like, say, in a horror film, the antagonists have a marked advantage over the protagonists, whereas in a thriller, the protagonist has some measure of fighting back.
Maybe. I don't know, because when it first came out, like Alien horror film, and yet
definitely
it ends with bug stompy mayhem. Even though it started off with they're coming out of the goddamn walls and all various other horrible things happening. So interesting. And this just seems to reinforce my opinion that the two aren't distinct. So, yeah.
They do lie on the same part of the spectrum, I guess.
Oh, Wikipedia even says the horror and action genres often overlap with the thriller, so it's sort of like a horror action. Would that be a fair description of a thriller?
It might be a subset of a thriller.
See, horror itself, like you mentioned Silent Hill 2 earlier, you don't play Silent Hill 2 for the pulse-pounding fights or the incredible like duels with people. Like in Silent Hill 2, there is action in a way, but it's sort of it's the protagonist trying to escape. It's the protagonist trying to get out of fighting and stuff like that. It's the fighting isn't the key thing. It's the surviving that's the more important thing. So
yeah, you never feel triumphant no matter how many monsters you kill.
Yeah, I would say thriller is where the horror and action genre meets, and that would probably be my definition of it, at least. So yeah, interesting, an interesting discussion.
Indeed. So I guess for our viewers to take away from that, there's multiple ways you can write a horror fic.
Oh yes, good lord. what other like
In the end,
subsections or related
do whatever you
sorts
want.
are
We
out
don't know
there?
what we're talking about.
Yeah. Neither does Wikipedia. Shock horror.
Wikipedia is
what are the
suggesting all
sort
kinds
of
of hybrid babies.
mm,
Horror, action, thriller,
and that
Action
use
adventure.
oh god,
action
yeah.
horror, act horror.
hmm Ah dear. What other sort
I
of
guess.
fusions
Well,
are there? Like
there's the division between, like, say, action and psychological horror. I
hmm.
know, to bring up Yahtzee again, he's drawn the distinction between, say, Dead Space and
Mm.
Silent Hill in
Yes,
many of his
the whole
reviews.
a
I
boogie
will
woogie
return,
woo
hopefully,
things.
probably, maybe. Goodbye.
See you in a second, Red. But yeah, like his distinction is three kinds of horror games where um a monster jumping out of a closet and going a bloogie woogie woo, which was Doom. Uh, a monster walking down a brightly lit hallway plucking violins at you and then attacking you, which is
Your
Dead
Dead
Space.
Space.
And the final one was a monster which, as we mentioned before, you never actually see, and it just taps you on the shoulder and it lets your mind fill in the blanks. It's almost as
Yeah,
if
what does he say? I know exactly what you're talking about, trying to dredge up the actual dialogue. There's a man in a mask sitting just behind you, and you just know he's going to go a bloogie woogie woo, but you don't want to say anything because he might put his cock in your eye.
That's it. What's it he says about a good horror game doesn't need to hurt you, it just needs to hand you sandpaper and shout encouragement as you vigorously massage your undercarriage.
Sounds
That's
about
it,
right.
That's it.
Yeah, the man is a genius. Um, so yeah, so that was a nice loop back from horror and thriller background to letting the readers do the work for you in terms of monster design. Hmm. Is there any way that's applicable to other genres of story? Like, is there ever an occasion in an action story or some other kind of genre where it's best just to leave it to the reader's imagination?
I guess from what I've seen and from my own experiments, it seems like if you're, say, writing an action sequence, like say you have a fight or something, all you need to do is give the reader just enough to manage the choreography of it. Like say you have two characters fighting, you need simply describe their actions in a nice flowing sequence of events. Now, not to the point where it gets repetitious or what have you, but as long as you give them a concrete picture of what exactly each character is doing, they can concoct all the nice flashy effects for themselves.
I suppose there's an element of that in every scene you write. Like someone in Bob's chat earlier was asking for help writing a scene in which Fancy Pants was taking a lady to dinner, and he wanted to write about how the table had a champagne bottle and 3 glasses, and it had a little folded card that said reserved for Sir Alistair and Lady Truffles or something on one side, and something else on the other. And it's just like, you don't need to write all that. You just need to set the basic premise of the scene, like you'll say there's a table with some drinks on it or something, and they're in a restaurant or something like that, and you let the reader fill the other blanks in themselves, because they don't need to hear about the exact writing on the reservation card, like it's something that comes up in a lot of war stories or stories with guns in particular, where
You
an
don't
author
need to describe
really likes,
exactly how the bolt cycles back on your weapons, guys.
yeah, or an author really likes a particular version of the AK-47 and just refuses not to say he lifted his AK-47 and shot his AK-47 at the enemies, who shot back with their AK-47. We get the picture, dude. It's a gun, You can just say he shot at them and they shot back, and you'd accomplish exactly the same thing story-wise, and it wouldn't drag on as much. So,
I think was it Hemingway who either he coined the term or someone else applied it to his writings, but there's what they call the iceberg method of writing,
Hmm.
where you write just enough on the surface and let the reader fill in everything below the surface.
Mm.
And that does pretty much describe Hemingway's style. It's very beige,
Minimalist.
very minimalist,
Hmm.
and often, I found that's the way you do it. I mean, you can set the scene, but the moment you start describing in too much exacting detail is where you can really easily lose the reader.
Hmm. It kills the pacing, and it also like just as soon as you start describing a scene, they're going to form an image in your head, and the more you describe the scene, the more you're telling them that no, what you pictured is wrong, sort of thing. You know?
Hmm. And it can sort of help to give them like, say you're describing a character, yeah, and especially in this realm of fan fiction where the characters essentially all occupy the same body but are just different colors and such. It can
Mhm.
help to describe your character in detail, or you can just gloss over it and
Mhm.
let the reader concoct everything else themselves. I mean,
Mhm.
generally, all you need to write in this fandom is coat color, main color, cutie mark, bam, done.
Mhm. I it was an example I used when aforementioned member of Bob's group was asking about it, but maybe in your head they drove up in a 2006 Dodge Charger SRT or whatever, and maybe that's what you're seeing in your head, but it's not relevant to the story in any way, so there's no point in adding it because it just doesn't do anything.
And there's the key phrase, I think, relevant to the story.
Mm, mm.
And if you're trying, you have to put thought into what exactly you're writing. If you describe a character in a certain way, that'll impart a certain implicit meaning to the reader. But you don't describe that implicit meaning because that is no longer implicit. You let them concoct that meaning for themselves. You actually engage their thought processes. And that, I think, is the key to any effective writing, is whether you engage the reader or not.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
Speaking
Right.
of relevance to the story,
Mm-hmm.
I think there a lot of people say that you should probably try to cut out as much as you can that is irrelevant to the story, but there is also a limit to that. In case you haven't noticed, I like playing devil's advocate for advice like this. But like, if you literally trim out every single thing that is not relevant to the story, then your story is becomes just a few sentences long.
Oh, yeah.
So and so
Well, it depends on your
this.
definition of relevant
Yeah.
to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, take any old adventure story for example. I mean, there's going to be a lot in there that's not particularly relevant to the story. But
yeah, I mean, if you strip it down to the bare bones, it's going to be they went here, they did this, and something happened that is of consequence to the plot. And
Yeah.
that's
If you want to strip
utterly
it down to
boring.
the very minimum, it's going to be like Twilight saved the world. Done. Thank you. That's 4 seasons done. Thank you very much. But like, it's true that there is a limit to what you can cut out without negatively affecting the story, and each author has their own standards as to what that is. Like Hemingway before was very severe in what he would not include in the story. He included about as little as you could get away with without it just being a bullet-pointed list of what things happened.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I guess individual style comes into play.
Mm-hmm. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got people like Short Skirts and Explosions. Who
Very purple, very detailed, yes.
Mhm.
yes, I tried reading Astreo, and I realized that basically everything that I was reading had almost nothing to do with what Rainbow Dash was actually trying to get done.
Except it did, but it took a while to realize the meaning of everything.
It depends on your definition of relevant to the story, C-Squared.
Fair.
I guess.
Fair.
Yeah, speaking for myself, I think a good example of the ideal hybrid of both sides of this would be Raymond Chandler. If any of you have read some of his works, with their, like the quintessential hard-boiled private detective stories, or one of the finest examples of it. But virtually every single word that he puts to paper is relevant in some fashion. But the thing is, he describes things. He, through Philip Marlowe, his narrator, describes things in a manner that is relevant to the character and therefore to the overall feel of the story.
That's true.
To use the Big Sleep as an example, there is a scene early on where Marlowe walks into the room of kind of the femme fatale of the story, Vivian Sternwood, and he, I remember one of the first sentences of description of the room that he walks into is, the room was too large, the windows were too tall, the curtains too long, and it says something about the character of Philip Marlowe as well as the room's occupant, as well as giving imagery of the room itself. And I think that's just about perfect for what any writer should aspire to. And there's plenty more details that go with that, like he describes the colors as being bled out, which is actually a bit of foreshadowing to the overall storyline. But I guess that's my ideal, where every single word is relevant in some way, even if only the author really knows.
Yeah, you're advocating against sort of just like having it stated. You're saying it should be shown rather than told.
Well, everything stated is showing something, even if it's not apparent to the reader. Basically, I'm giving you license to fuck with your readers, guys.
Excellent. Oh dear. Anyway, we did have a couple of other questions mentioned in the chat. One of them was from Deja. What tags would we like to see added to FimFic? I think we may have answered this
Mystery! Mystery!
See,
Is sci-fi a tag?
no. Sci-fi should absolutely be
That's
one.
my answer. Because I gotta go. Dinner's ready. Goodbye.
See you, Red.
Bye-bye.
I hope I
Very well,
interjected with
Louis
enough
Sterling.
spontaneity and creativity and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposed to sing tonight, but Alex kept dying.
He did keep dying.
Repeatedly.
What were you going to sing again? Was it going to be Les Miserables or Frozen?
I just realized Alex
Either or,
died.
probably both. We were gonna sing Frozen, but Anna was gonna be replaced by Javert.
And I'm Javert. Anyway,
No, prisoner 246, 0206, 0451.
You're sending us up on your parole,
man?
Oh god, here we go. Go get food, Red.
Bye.
Go eat some nuts. Get some nuts. Ah, dear. I just realized that Alex dies a bunch. That amuses me more than it
Oh,
should.
jeez.
Oh boy. Oh,
Yeah. But no, sci-fi and mystery are the two most commonly mentioned ones. Are there any less common suggestions that you think might be interesting?
Oh, allow me to back things up a bit. I know a common counter-argument to adding a mystery tag is that it would be abused.
well, every tag is abused.
That's part of my counter-argument, but I think on the whole, FimFic would definitely benefit from such a tag because there are multiple applications for it, and it would open up a whole new genre, I think.
Right.
Because
I think people would be incentivized to try and write mystery stories because there's a tag.
Exactly.
They wouldn't go, oh, should I tag this dark? Should I tag this slice of life? Should I tag this? They wouldn't have that question anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think because it is my belief that the tags on the site do influence, what exactly people write. more doors you open, the better. Honestly, is my opinion on the subject. But to say that, like, if someone would plaster the mystery tag onto their story, if there's even the barest hint of intrigue in it, honestly, I wouldn't care.
They already do that for dark.
They do that
Say
for
again,
dark.
Paul?
They do that for romance. They do that for everything, really.
Will
Comedy.
you guys advocate the addition of a clop tag, so that
A what tag?
clop, as in not romance but with sex? See, because at the moment, every single 5-minute long Anthro Rainbow Dash makes love to whoever story is tagged with romance, even though there is as much romance in there as there is in a fucking bottle of wine or something like that. There's nothing there that spells romance, It's just
The
fucking-
difference between, like you said, between romance and passion.
Should it
To use some
be more
clean
correct to have it tagged mature sex and leave romance out?
Well, sure, but you could say that about an awful lot of things. Where would it just not be easier just to not have the tag? Which is why I'm asking: do you think there should be a tag for clop?
Well, it certainly let the readers know exactly what they're getting into. I guess the question is whether we'd rather that whole genre be sequestered away from everything else. Because to use the distinction between romance and, well, clop, it is possible to have a passionate love scene in a romance fic that is entirely different from, well...
It's different between love and lust,
Exactly.
Like, if one wanted, assuming a clop tag was added, you could go for the search function, look for a story with mature scenes and romance, and exclude the clop tag, and then you just remove every instance of anthroponies ever from the list,
Well, I am grateful for the anthro tag for making that
Yeah.
process very simple.
Yeah, you could accomplish the same just by hiding the anthro tag, but I don't know. I'm not sure what my opinion on the.
It is an interesting question, though.
That's true.
It's
Anyway.
less obvious than mystery and sci-fi.
True. Well, what are the tags would you
I guess
think might
I
work
guess
or
the
would
way
like to
I
see?
guess the way I see it is
Go on.
adding a clop tag would be a closing of doors, whereas like mystery and sci-fi would be opening. Like with a clop tag, you're shutting everything away into its own little room, whereas with mystery and sci-fi, you're kind of opening up a new little area for everything.
Locking it away suggests that because of the addition of this tag, it's going to stop people from doing.
No, fuck no.
Yeah, it's separating the love from the lust, which is true, but I'd argue that that's actually a good thing for an awful lot of people.
And I think I might agree.
I
But
don't know,
I'm not in charge, so
Yeah, true.
One
My
change
people-
I'd argue for is actually normal instead of slice of life.
A normal tag. Oh, would a normal
I
tag
thought normal only
to
existed.
replace slice of life?
Normal, they use that on EQD,
Yeah.
and I've always found it far more useful than slice of life.
Interesting.
Well,
How would
I guess
you?
I've never really seen much of a distinction between those. I've always been kind of confused why EQD foisted that distinction on things, because a slice of life would kind of fold into a normal
Yeah,
fic.
it's a slice of your
Well, I think-
everyday life.
I'm trying to think about why, but I haven't been on EQD in forever, so I'm not really able to remember exactly why I like the tag more.
Well, I'm afraid that
remember
kind of
that
undermines your
apparently-
argument there.
I know, but I
I think
think
a lot of the problem people had with the slice of life tag was back when it conflicted with the adventure tag, and you weren't
I
allowed to
think
have.
a lot of it was that normal fit better with other tags.
Maybe, but like now you are allowed to have a slice of life adventure story, and you are allowed to have sad tragedies and stuff like that.
Oh, wait, we are?
I guess I can.
Yeah,
That changed? When did that
yeah.
change?
While you were dead for the past
Oh.
year.
Oh.
I guess I can see
So-
what you're saying now. Like, if you have a normal adventure fic, you get a sense of it's trying to stay more to the tone of the show, whereas, like, say, a dark adventure fic will, well, go to darker places.
Right. I've actually always preferred an idea where you have like 2 primary tags, and then you can have like 8 secondary tags that kind of detail out what your story is.
Would the secondary tags be the same tags as the first one?
I think
like
we
you
would have a wider, like EQD has a lot of different tags that they have, so I think we would have a wider spread of tags that we can use for those secondary
Interesting.
tags.
Interesting. I don't even
But
know.
it would make the stories, I think, more defined as to what they are. Where some stories you look at it and go, why does this have a comedy tag?
True, but again, this system would require a pretty big overhaul of the
Yeah,
current
it would.
Yeah.
So,
And I
And that
guess
would require Nighty doing work, and we all know that's not going to happen.
yes, that's very true.
let's
Except
see
for-
here.
Except for on his body, apparently Nighty's really like making an effort to get fit. Like his Tumblr is like his last few posts have all been him at various meetups recently and him doing various schemes to like improve his stamina and stuff like that. So
Improve his what?
stamina, like he's running further, like from couch to kilometers or something like that. You know, one of those schemes.
A whole 2 kilometers?
No. Where did you get
Run
the
2
number
miles and then we'll talk something.
Yes.
Well, 2 miles is
yeah.
only 3,200. He's not very far away from it.
Anyway.
Do 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, and then run 2 miles, and then we'll talk.
Or just run 10 miles.
But no.
10 miles.
Sit-ups and push-ups are boring.
Not if you do 2 minutes of them. Trust me, I've done that I don't know how many times.
I'd rather not do that. I'd rather just run like 8 miles or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then
Easy.
you aren't improving your fitness across all areas.
Well,
That's what I'm
You'd
looking
be
for.
surprised how much you use your arms while you're running.
Get swell.
Do you even lift, bro?
Ew.
I lift air.
I lift
Nah,
air.
nah. Like, just back in May, did...
Deja is apparently coming to our houses now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I'd
sure I
be
can
more
take her.
impressed than anything else. If she actually flew to the UK to help her write an Anthro story, I'd probably bloody help her write the Anthro story. Like, Jesus Christ, that's impressive.
Let's see here. I'm not sure if this was really a question asked to us, but I'm pretty sure I could expand on it. You know, why is it always a soldier or some sort of kid with a broken home or some sort of problem? Asks Seether. And yeah, I've seen many examples of this on
Because
Fanfic.
too edgy for me.
Well, the funny thing is, you know, I know a few guys, a few authors on Femfic who are actually in the military. You know, just to rattle off a couple: Colton Gardez, Jake the Army guy. And the thing is, you rarely see them actually writing about war.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I know,
I
right?
feel like there's something about that.
See,
Well, the thing is,
I'm like one of the guys I know. Oh God, I forgot his name. No, I feel terrible. But no, there's one guy who Jake knows, who's one of his friends from the army or something like that, who writes a very good army story that we featured a little while ago. Which the name of the story has slipped my mind.
was that the Griffin War or Pony's Memoirs?
Yes, I think that's the one. And there's also
Jake loves that story.
yeah,
Mhm.
Jake loves that story, and it's a military guy
remember-
who wrote that. And Spectre Crystal wrote another military story, and he's ex-military himself. So there are definitely, and called, I think
Right,
called,
but I mean, just notice the difference in like one of those stories versus
The
super
teenager
edgy
who's
story.
writing about what
Super edgy.
Well,
fake
yeah,
military
yeah.
life is like.
No, that's true. I'm not aware of anyone in the military who's ever written a military man in Equestria story. Except,
Mhm.
no, Article 2. Article
Uh,
2 is written by a guy currently deployed somewhere and is a military man in Equestria.
Oh, I've never read it.
Can't say I
We
have
keep-
either, I'm afraid.
No,
But
it's
point
the
taken.
idea is that the main character is a major in the Marines who was running security for some experimental thing and ended up in Equestria. Like
Oh.
that just sounds like the ultimate stereotypical running Equestria story. So there are
Well, that's actually kind of interesting that it's a major, that it's an actual high-ranking officer rather than, as seems to be the typical
Private Joe
grunt.
Schmo, super
Yeah.
edgy.
Yep. Because let me tell you, I've experienced a lot of the enlisted side in my 5 years in the Army thus far, and it's not all that interesting. I'll admit, I've yet to, experience anything on the officer side aside from, being in a PL capacity for the past year. But it is an entirely different world from like the junior enlisted or the NCO side of things. Because when you're an officer, your job is more or less to simply plan for things. You're not the one who's actually executing. That's the job of the enlisted and your NCOs.
Mhm.
So having a planner, having an officer, having a major who is used to dealing with like a battalion-sized element, several hundred guys, that could actually go places. What happens in the fic exactly?
Article 2, first chapter was actually pretty interesting. It was a
You say
really
that
good
as if
first
the rest
chapter.
was no good.
It's like Background Pony. The first chapter was really good, and then it just kept on going. Like
Well,
I
I
ended
enjoyed
up,
the entirety of Background Pony because it was
I
20 chapters.
oof, I could not. I did not like Background Pony. It was a very good short story that was turned into a pretty poor long story, in my opinion. But like the Article 2, the first chapter ends on a very nice cliffhanger that is instantly resolved, and all problems go away in the second chapter. And then it just turns into uh, military brony Equestria doing things. Like
So in other words, it might have been better served as being kind of a one-shot rather than a continued story.
it was a one shot, and then it got popular, and then he decided to continue it.
Ah, okay. Well,
So,
I guess that
yeah.
points out if you resolve the conflict, you can't really do much else unless you introduce another conflict into your story.
There isn't another conflict though. It's just carrying on.
Exactly.
Like, the ini- like, he the initial conflict was the fact that he was running security detail on an experimental thing. The idea being that they were planning to use wormholes to jump long distance, and it was an experimental ship. And
The
instead,
chronosphere, in other
Yeah.
words.
instead they ended up in a ship with no power, drifting slowly towards Equestria, and he saw all his friends die, and that was all very edgy. And the story itself, he spends like 80% of it in a hospital bed unconscious, and at the end, he reveals that during the time they had on the ship, they weren't sure what the effect they would have on simply being in the universe, because they were from outside the universe and stuff like that. And there was a sort of metaphor about overfilling a balloon until it pops and stuff like that. And it ends with a did he or did he not just kill himself scene. And then it turns out he tried to kill himself but didn't. And then from then on, it's just him playing with guns that the ponies salvaged from the wreckage. and that's it
Hmm.
for 20 odd chapters or something like that. I'm sticking with it to find out when he's planning to add a second storyline. It's just.
Well, again, it sounds like when you describe that it starts out all right, but then it falls into the same pitfalls that every story
other
like
Brady
that
comes
does.
Yeah.
It just comes down to the guns and the action and the America of things.
Yep. There are occasionally well-written somber moments where it's just like this guy. There are moments where his officerness shines through, and you realize this is a man who just lived when all of his subordinates and friends didn't. And there are occasional moments like that which are actually not badly written. And then 5 minutes later, he is just explaining what the internet is, and of course, he mentions all the porn that's on it, and everyone is very embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Because that's all you talk about when you talk about the internet, right?
Mhm. Mhm. And then there's another
I
moment
don't think
where
I
they're
need to quote Avenue Q on that one.
Yeah, very true. So, Article 2 was an interesting premise that just kept on going long after it should. Oh well.
Well, I guess that highlights the problem with all of these kind of military brony or military personnel in Equestria stories. There's only so much you can do with the concept before it all just starts being mundane. Because honestly, a lot of military life is mundane. Very mundane.
That's
Let me
true.
tell you, for the for the privates, the specialists and such, there's a lot of just sitting around.
Hurry up and wait.
That's the key phrase, yes.
Mhm.
Now, even if even in combat, I get some of the best war fiction is the kind that can actually balance those long stretches where not a whole lot happens with the pulse pounding action, because that's what life in a war zone is about.
Mhm.
It's about just having to deal with dealing with day-to-day goings on, and then suddenly someone's shooting at you. What do you do now, Private?
It's about being able to react when a life and death situation just suddenly appears right before you, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think, to use some examples, there's the X-Wing series by Michael A. Stackpole and Aaron Alston do a good balance of that sort of style. Yeah, for those who aren't familiar with it, the X-Wing series is a series of novels that take place after Return of the Jedi. That's basically, I guess you could kind of describe it as Top Gun, but Star Wars. All about
That's a very interesting description.
and yeah, they're actually very good books. They're all about the fighter pilots of Rogue Squadron and later Wraith Squadron as they do military shit. And it strikes overall, the series strikes a very good balance between the day-to-day operations, the stuff they do on the ships and such floating adrift through the blackness of space, and then their actual operations where they're flying and dogfighting and fighting for their lives.
I've not read the X-Wing books, which I probably should do because I am a big fan of the expanded universe. But just off the top of my head, I think the Gaunt's Ghost series of novels do a
That was
decently
exactly
good
what
job
I
of
was
it.
going to go into next. Dan fucking Abnett.
For those who don't know, Dan Abnett is a writer of many things, but primarily famous for his Warhammer 40,000 books. In particular, a series about Gaunt's Ghosts, a chapter, a company, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the
self-specialist.
regiment is...
Yes, regiment,
Yeah.
of course. That's the word.
They're a regimentalized force.
Of staff specialists who don't get in, like, they do get into fights in every book. Obviously, it's 40k, it's war everywhere. But
There is only war!
quite, but a not insignificant part of the war is sneaking around and arguing about what should be done, and non-combat things like walking around in trenches and things that don't involve shooting other things in the face for however many pages the books are made up of. So,
hmm And yeah, Abnett balances those two sides of it very, very well. And I think, and one of the things that does, which helps make an effective story, is it keeps the tension at a high note, because you never know exactly when the next firefight is going to begin. I know there are multiple occasions where the ghosts are just kind of carrying out day-to-day operations when suddenly they're ambushed.
That's very true. And not only that, even when they're fighting, not all the fighting is just constant John Rambo style daka daka daka. There are lulls in the fighting. There's an awful lot of running from one place to the next, and all sorts of things that aren't specifically shooting another thing in the face. So,
and I suppose that's another aspect to writing military fiction. You have to have an understanding of tactics, and this is something always shows through with a lot of these military brony and Equestria stories. Is people seem to think that combat is just shoot the machine gun at the enemy and then they die, we win. No.
But that's how combat works.
No. Even though the machine gun is your most mass casualty producing weapon, there is a lot more to combat than just that. Because I mean, if I see even one story that manages to have its protagonist actually attempt a flanking maneuver, it gives me, I give them points for that, simply because of how fucking rare it is. The whole point with combat, especially modern combat, which is now very small unit oriented, is to, one, fix the enemy with overwhelming firepower, what we call fire superiority, i.e. you are shooting at the enemy, they have their heads down, and therefore cannot react to whatever you're doing, and then to maneuver into a location where you can fucking kill them. There are very few stories which get this very basic premise right.
And it infuriates me! Yeah, I think maybe part of that is how every single brony warrior or soldier in Equestria is a lone wolf super cool guy who has all the guns himself and is a one-man killing machine, and he can't outflank people because it's just him, and besides, he can just shoot them all in the head with his Beretta, whatever fucking, needlessly specific gun
his
type.
Eagle Barrett.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. The smallest unit in the military is a two-man fire team. If anyone is ever alone, it means some shit has gone horribly awry. Now, one man can't do jack shit, despite what Hollywood would tell you. It's always a team effort.
Are there many stories where it is just like a couple of people? Because from what I can remember, it's either one badass lone person doing everything, or it's more like Spectre's story, or the Pony Griffin War story, where it's while there is a main character, it's a unit. Like they are in the army. Those are military fics, but they're not Brony and Equestria fics, though. Is my thing. Is there a Brony and Equestria thing where it's more than one person goes there? I mean, a military Brony and Equestria thing?
I know.
Probably.
I know. I've read a couple where it's like, I remember reading one. It was like some Marine unit is rolling around Afghanistan in Humvees. That's actually a demerit right there, because we have not been rolling around in Humvees for a long while because they're vulnerable as shit to IEDs, and they encounter a group of Royal Guards who somehow found themselves on Earth, and they fight them because, reasons.
They're American. They gotta shoot new things.
Yeah. But that was about the extent of that one. And it still got pretty much everything wrong with regards to communications, how the convoy should react. I mean, for fuck's sake, I remember just shaking my head. These guys are rolling out at night, and yet they didn't bring Nod. They didn't bring night vision goggles. What the flying fuck?
We're still actually live?
Yeah, we got another 5
minutes or so, yeah.
Hi, Red.
We're discussing a lot problems with military brony and Equestria stories, like
Of which there are many.
which there are absolutely many.
I wish there were a lot fewer.
I remember one.
Dave,
You kindled
hang
a
on,
memory
hang
in
on,
me, Sock.
Say
There
again?
You kindled a memory in me when you said that someone was rolling around Afghanistan in Humvees and stuff like that. There was a story which I saw repeatedly get in the feature box, and one person I knew was telling me it was good, and they were being angrily shouted down by at least a dozen other people who were just like, "What the hell are you on about?" And all I can remember about it was the cover picture was the whatever it is, Dragunov sniper rifle thing, whatever it is, and I don't do guns. The story itself was Marines rolling around in Humvees, so fun there. They get ambushed by evil Taliban, and the main character.
To Equestria?
The main character was
The Taliban use their black evil magic to send them to Equestria.
Something like that. Like the main character was the guy with the LMG, and obviously he mows down thousands of them. And his best friend, who's the guy with the high-powered rifle, gets shot. So he picks up the high-powered rifle and starts mowing them down with that. And then they decide to actually get out of there because reasons. So he gets into the back of the truck and starts shooting people with his gun again. And then he gets hit by an RPG, and then he gets sent to Equestria. Like, with the first fucking 5 lines were just some of the most atrocious shit I've read. And you reminded me of this, Sock, with your bloody Humvees rolling around Afghanistan and shit. Why? Why, Sock?
Do you recall what those 5 lines were? Please share the horror.
No.
Does it compete with Rainbow Dash Bracket?
Bracket, Rainbow Dash, Bracket. I purged them from my memory. Why did that story have so many brackets?
I don't remember. Did that story still exist?
Probably. I don't have a link for it. I think it was they used brackets instead of instead of speech marks or something like that.
It was weird.
What?
It was really weird. Where did they find that?
Where do you think Barada finds all of the stories he finds?
I have no idea. I think he pulls them from hell or something like that. He has a portal directly to Satan's ass cheeks and just pulls out shitty fanfics. Like, fucking Christ, Barada.
That's
Where
really
do you
way to
find
put
this?
it.
Yeah. God damn it. I'm full of metaphors today.
Yep, I'm writing that one down.
Portal straight to... Oh, no. Oh, God. Deja's asking, will one of us write ISIS goes to Equestria? Good fucking God. I hope not.
Well, we'd have to also bring in a coalition of like NATO and the U.S. and all that, and they're bombing ISIS and causing massive collateral damage to Equestria.
Putin goes to Equestria. Just got NATO. Just
Alex and I actually discussed
no. ISIS can't stop dealing with the sexual tension between themselves and the ponies, and the NATO force keeps dithering about whether or not to accept them into the United Nations.
And then one of them realizes that that the ponies are the 72 virgins they've been promised. Oh dear. Oh hell.
Awkwardness intensifies.
Yeah. Good lord. Right.
The mention of Putin actually reminded me, Alex and I kind of discussed half seriously an idea for a fic where, yes, Putin knows about ponies. So,
Putin
our fic is just him going about his day-to-day business, but all of his thoughts are occupied by ponies.
See, he's just too distracted by Applejack to think about what's going on in Ukraine.
Like he's ordering the invasion of Ukraine, but simultaneously he's thinking about his little miniatures back in his room,
Oh,
and
God.
whether or not he can actually get Applejack to kiss Trixie.
Of course, fucking Trixie. Of course.
Trixie demanded that he take over the Ukraine before his before his one true pairing comes true.
Right. Okay. Okay. I think we've hit the stage of the show where we're just not even sure what we're saying ourselves. I know I'm not.
Just to put a closing bullet point on that that whole military bronies discussion.
Mhm.
For any of our viewers who are thinking of indulging themselves in such a fic, know that all the tactics and shit are online. Like, there are Army publications available publicly that lay out all the tactics and shit, so there is literally no excuse for this sort of
But
drivel.
that means I have to do research, and research is boring.
Fuck your boredom! That's the Army way.
That's the Army way. Oh, dear. See, they get you deliberately bored just so that they can fuck it. Yep. Oh, dear. Also, with Alex gone, how do we actually close this hangout?
I don't know.
Do we all just leave and hope it closes on its own?
I think
Well, whoever has webcams on, you can have like a little what's that Jim Carrey movie about the TV show?
What?
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 Oh, the Truman Show?
Yeah, the Truman Show, where it just you could just leave your cameras on, it'll film your daily lives, and we could draw in more viewers that way.
Alright, you can watch me sleep. Yeah. Perfectly normal. Maybe we should just prod Alex and get him to come in here and shut it off or something.
Alex, save us!
I think actually I might be able to do it. So are we
Yeah,
ready to
people
wrap it
signed
up?
in on the Seattle's Angels account should be able to.
Ah,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
okay.
So I can do that then.
Do it,
This
yes.
works. Farewell,
Kill it.
everybody.
Bye bye.
Yeah.